The weight is magnified by the carry the rear out, putting pressure around the axle. This kills stability during excessive so you can't floor it.
Was I wrong about transaxles? Well, let's find out. Formula One is the industry honing the greatest formula for something with explosions and four wheels. The Formula One is self-explanatory. It is the best formula, slowing down the fastest, accelerating the fastest, and taking a corner the fastest. So every evolution is, or at least should be, making the car better and faster. The same case is for car companies, but a lot of the time, especially for these car companies that have been here for centuries, performance is influenced by style, emotion, and heritage. What do I mean? A car company is much less eager to dump a signature component of theirs in favor of a better performing component. Till this day, Lamborghini is using V12s when they could just get a 2-liter V6 engine, can make more power with turbos and ethanol and methanol and whatever. But what is the damage done when a car company clings to their heritage? Two cars that really stand out for me is the death oversteer Widowmaker, aka Porsche 911, and the other one is the Ferrari. In F1, there's always been an innovation hustle. Insane systems like a fan, active suspension, and turbos and all. When turbos were reaching their peak of making F1 cars go over 1,300 horsepower, some even 1,400 horsepower, Senna's Lotus had a power-to-weight ratio of around 2,000 horsepower per ton. Just think about that for a second, let it sink in. But then in 1989, turbos were banned. All these perks. Sometimes it was for the reason of pure domination that these great innovations were banned. Sometimes safety reasons. But most of the time, it was to force best efficiency of what's already there. This was racing wisdom speaking. And from the years back in F1, just when they moved from front engine to mid-engine, the build was simple. Mid-rear engine, huge heavy transaxle, rear wheel drive. No aero, no rear wing, no front wing, no traction control. In GT racing there has been the same competition, with the same sort of goal and point in mind of just having the best formula to be the fastest. But it was milder. You can't deny it, it was milder. I mean, one rule famous in GT racing, the most important rule, sometimes it was written, sometimes it was an unwritten rule. But this great rule was that every car must be based on a road car. This is the game of more limits and challenges. Not as straightforward as F1 or Pikes Peak, you know. But there was one brand that stood out above the rest with the sole purpose just to be the fastest. Enzo Ferrari himself said,
"Others build race cars to sell road cars. I sell road cars to race cars."
Keep that in mind. They built F1, road, and GTs since 1947. They have grown over the years with one purpose: to be the fastest. But Enzo had a problem. That was his stubbornness, his hatred in evolution, just like me. He despised the innovation of the Germans, you know, the idea of a beetle.
The horse must pull the carriage.
But after a while of grinning and trying to win, he made a mid-engine Ferrari. And from that time till now, Ferrari has specialized in one build: mid-rear engine with a transaxle gearbox, rear wheel drive. Coming back to Formula One, from the time of black and white 600-ton box TVs till the late 90s of F1 cars were running in this layout of mid-rear engine, transaxle, rear wheel drive. Ferrari raced in Formula One from those days till now, and they are extremely successful. But from the late 90s till now, Formula One has known what a transaxle is, and so have road cars like the Carrera GT and NSX. If you don't know the whole boo-ha and problem with the transaxle that made Formula One evolve out of that into what I think is the greatest formula ever, then check out this video, the second video on balance. You'll see how an NSX thrashed a 296 Ferrari. But back to this video, you know the Ferrari, and they have kept this build of the old F1 cars from the 70s till now. Mid-rear engined, transaxle and rear wheel drive. Ferrari stood out because they have taken the transaxle as a weapon and not try to hide its so-called weakness. A 918, it's four-wheel drive. McLaren, they have an electrically controlled open differential with electronic hydraulic suspension. All these fancy things to hide the liability of a transaxle. But is it really a liability? Instead of using advanced electronic technology, Ferrari has been known to do what they do best, pure finesse. And it's been demonstrated in many situations. Fernando Alonso is not a bad driver. He just specialized in his own technique that doesn't suit this weak rear-ended Aston Martin. Keep that in mind. So you question, am I right or not? And how is a Ferrari fast if you said it's unbalanced? That's what I'm gonna answer in today's video. And I'm gonna put the final nail in the coffin of single perspective. Kick out your narrow mind and get your coffee, because we're about to sit on this topic for a while. Niki Lauda, 3-time Formula 1 world champion. He raced in the 70s, sneaking a little bit into Senna's day. He is one of the best Formula 1 drivers, truly one of my favorites, all because he had a unique technique that was made for the F1 car he drove. This is special, that a driver's technique also fits their car perfectly. Because here's the thing, there are techniques that are honed by people that can be mastered as a technique, but that can't fit all cars perfectly. And sometimes, racing a certain car, it will still be fast, but it is not the absolute limit of the car, even though his technique is mastered. But Niki Lauda is one driver who stands out because he managed to do this properly. This is why he's one of my favorites. Niki Lauda's second name is Smooth, and his last name is Ferrari. He accomplished perfect rotation in his Formula 1 car. First of all, let's go over the F1 he piloted. It was a Ferrari 12T. It had a mid-rear flat 12 engine, pumping out 513 horsepower. Then it was the differential, then it was the transaxle, rear wheel drive. And this car weighed in at 575 kilograms. That's nearly a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio. And what made Niki Lauda special, as I said, is that his technique went perfectly with the car he drove. In his 312 Ferrari, Niki would trail brake hard and turn in, lifting off the brake, decelerating. As he is decelerating in the corner, the transaxle's inertia would push the engine offset on the side of the engine, measured by the turning angle you would put in to rotate the engine.
Because the transaxle's position in rotation, it pushes the engine like the rear wheels of an 86. Only this time, in the Ferrari, you're using the transaxle's inertia. That is why the acceleration is key.
Encouraging harder turning, equaling a perfect revolution. It did half of the job of turning for him. He used the transaxle to turn harder. He used it for his advantage during hard braking. He handled the wheel like a delicacy. Sometimes he would hardly be steering. The transaxle would be doing some of the steering for him. Driven right, the transaxle encourages rotation.
Entering a turn too fast, and the transaxle will sort it out for you, rotating the Ferrari around the turn. This is actually a technique of turning a Ferrari. They love diving understeer.
Enter fast, decelerating, forming the Ferrari to lean toward understeer a little bit, but keep just enough angle to let the transaxle push the side of the engine, rotating the engine to make all four wheels and the transaxle rotate around the engine, take the corner fast as possible. The whole point is to enter on deceleration. That's the way the transaxle and the four wheels can perfectly rotate around the engine. It is the fastest way to drive a Ferrari. In this way, the transaxle does what Keiichi Tsuchiya does with his feet in an NSX. How not to drive a Ferrari? The offset turning angle decides the weight, torque, aggression of the transaxle's inertia. You want the transaxle to push your engine at the angle. If it misses the engine, it will drag the rear out wide, and the engine will also be dragged out. The whole car will just go wide and you'll spin out. A too high, unbalanced wheel speed ratio will also take out the rear end. But driven right, no one is able to outbrake you.
I can't beat a driver I can't outbrake.
Michael Schumacher is one incredibly special driver that was able to manipulate his whole car's every single action with engine braking, throttle input, steering, braking, coasting. He could adjust whether he wants more understeer or oversteer as if he was just turning a knob. And that is how you can make a transaxle work to your advantage and not be a liability. But you've got to understand this. There are two modes your Ferrari has. First is rotation mode, and the other is exit mode. You'll kill yourself if you are switching between these at the wrong time. And yes, it is literally that crazy. The rotation mode is what we've been talking about, using your transaxle to your advantage for cornering speed. Exit mode is acceleration. You'll understand now why there are two different modes. Blindly opening the throttle in mid-turn and your front wheels will lift off the ground as the transaxle deploys excessive rearward weight transfer. Okay, your front wheels won't literally lift off the ground. You'll just greatly understeer. The Ferrari will straighten up and you will lose all your rotation. Because it's switching modes, you're gonna blindly open the throttle like this. This is unbalanced driving at its finest. If you are complaining about your front end lifting off the ground when you open the throttle, you're supposed to have entered the turn faster and still be deaccelerating. If you've been picturing the whole case of one corner in a Ferrari perfectly done, yes, you've probably also thought about lines, how different a Ferrari would take its line compared to an NSX. The line is where everything should come into view, if you don't already have it in view. The technique to rotate a Ferrari favors a modified V-line as standard, due to the rotation magic deep dives that a Ferrari does finest. This is usually demonstrated to be the fastest way to corner with a Ferrari. Watch an onboard of a professional driver. The basis of driving is controlling your center of gravity. Do not forget that. Okay, now, the way I described opening the throttle in mid-corner, it is 100% true, but there is an exaggeration. I know you are not that bad of a driver. Gradual throttle opening can allow you to open the throttle earlier. That's what Niki Lauda is all about. Smoothness. And there's another Formula One driver I have to mention. Someone else with a bizarre technique. Truly one of my favorite drivers. And his name is Ayrton Senna. Through a turn, he would kick the throttle at a rate high enough to keep the engine revs high, so the turbo stays spooled up. But every kick of his was so fast. He would lift off the throttle so fast enough after the kick, so that the suspension does not react to the kick and transfer all the weight backwards during mid-corner. His line stayed linear. In this way, by the exit, he made a 500-year lagging turboed engine respond like a naturally aspirated one without unsettling the car. And with this technique, he could exit corners like a Druid of Wrath. Do you still want to ask why Senna and Niki Lauda and Michael Schumacher and all these drivers are so highly regarded? So to answer the question, is a Ferrari unbalanced? If you drive it like an NSX, 100%, yes, it is unbalanced. F1 proves that it's not even the best build. They dished it long ago before Alonso's time. But does driving it right make up for its liabilities? Make up. The transaxle is an advantage. This is how Ferrari kept their signature build, specialized in it and refined it, and made it a true masterpiece. I mean, personally, if you ask me, what would you rather have, a Ferrari or NSX? Okay, obviously I'm going to choose the NSX. I prefer its build, but that doesn't take away any of Ferrari's trophies they've earned over the years. Ferrari's road cars are really not near the best performing cars, but that's a story for another video. You know now how to drive a Ferrari. So drive it right and don't complain about understeer when you open the throttle. If you've been watching the video till now, you might as well subscribe. Thanks for watching.